All right, awkward transition time. I've really enjoyed the conversations at meals this week. A lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion. I learned today, thinking about being co-creators, or sub-creators, sorry, I'll get this right in a minute. Sub-creators. Let's get out of YouTube before it plays something I don't want to be played. Maybe you categorize the last song like that. Okay, so speaking about being sub-creators, we're talking about making maple syrup. And I was amazed the amount of automation just in a small maple syrup operation in Kentucky was going on. With the tubing and the suction that you create in the tubing and pulling, but even in the processing of the maple syrup, they were using reverse osmosis. And that really triggered my interest because, do you know, another application of wood is to make the film that allows reverse osmosis or forward osmosis to occur, which is a great filtration technology. It's been around for a few decades, but you can take cellulose and get it into a solvent with chemical processes and extrude that cellulose into a sheet and control the porosity and the size of the pores in that sheet very closely using wood. Okay? And that's the key to technology of reverse and forward osmosis. Aren't you just excited this morning? Yeah. Woo. Woo. And Eastman Chemical makes those cellulosics for that process. So just going back to my first lecture a little bit, but we can be, it's amazing what the Lord has created us the ability to do as sub-creators. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to get my clicker. It's on the screen. And we're talking about Session 5, the stewarding of fruits of our labor. So we've taught the foundational workers in the image of God. We've talked about preparing for work, discerning a calling. Notice I don't say discerning the calling. Okay, we got into that. We talked about the ethics of work, using the Ten Commandments as our outline. We talked about the thorns and thistles, the trouble that we experience this side of the fall, but the hope both from the beginning and now in the future we have in the fruitfulness and the satisfaction of our work, bringing glory to God all throughout. Now we're going to get really practical and talk about stewarding the fruits of our labors. A little foundational stuff here. This is not going to be... Got it. We can forego that. I can click this way. Oh, provocative statements. Always forget. You ready? Here we go. Get ready. To focus on financial stewardship is serving mammon, not God. Boo. The Lord owns the tithe. The rest can be used at my discretion. Boo. I don't need an emergency fund as long as I have a good credit card or two or three. Talk to Pastor Jeremiah about having more than 3 credit cards. He is tight with his money. Saving is an act of unbelief in God's promise of provision, a lack of faith. You guys are getting good at these. So I must be a good teacher. Hopefully better than my dancing. Okay, buying used stuff is always a losing proposition in the long term. Buying stock in public companies is no different than gambling. A few claps. We got a little support for that statement out there. Gold is the only safe investment, the only hedge against inflation. I probably won't get to that today because of time, but put it in the Q&A. I'm entitled to a Starbucks coffee drink every day. All right. Fun. Key principles. Number 1, God owns everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He's the owner of everything as creator. Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. It answers one of those provocative statements. Yeah, He owns the tithe. He owns everything. He owns you. He owns your life. So think of it that way. Principle number 2, we are to honor the Lord from our first fruits. Honor the Lord with your wealth, Proverbs 3, and your first fruits of all your produce. And this is reinforced in the Old Covenant. It's reinforced in the New Covenant as well. Not abrogated, in my mind. Genesis 2:15, the Lord took the man, put him in the garden, and we're moving to third general principle. We are stewards of all that God gives us. To be stewards. We're not owners, we're stewards. So we see that from Genesis 2, starting in the beginning, which is a very good place to start. Luke 16:10 through 11. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. We can apply this to a lot of things, but certainly can't go past the stewardship of the money and goods and certain things that God gives us. Matthew 6:24, moving to a fourth principle, we must trust in, and we must not trust in or serve mammon. We must trust the Lord. And Matthew 6 highlights that. You cannot serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Did I say that right? No, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. But money is a root. So be careful. You don't serve mammon. You serve the Lord, and you steward His gifts to you. A few purposes of material blessings. We've touched on these a lot already, so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. Provide for yourself so that you won't starve, so you can eat. 2 Thessalonians again. Provide for your family. If you don't do that, you're worse than an infidel. Doesn't mean there are times where we don't trust, we don't look to our family, our church, for support. There are going to be hard times, thorns and thistles, right? But to the extent you can in your stewardship, don't make yourself dependent on others. Don't make your family dependent on others. That's a general principle. Another purpose of the materials blessings God gives us is to help others. Good charity. Ephesians 4:28, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor doing honest work with his hands so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. And that's in true need. Be careful with your charity. If you're responsible for this in your church sometime, be careful with the diacon or whatever with your charity. You do not want to create a cycle of dependency or just reinforce dependency. Make sure it's a true need. And we also should all be striving to get back to a position where we can support ourselves and our family and even be above and beyond. For the work of the church is another purpose. And just a word on that. If everybody was faithful in giving the first fruits, the church would have a lot of resources and probably could manage everything God calls them to do as a church with just the 10%. It's also to enjoy. We don't have time to go through the scriptures, but God wants us to enjoy the material blessings He gives us. We are body and soul, created body and soul. We're not just here on earth to be spiritual in that sense, right? God wants us to enjoy what He gives us. In moderation, this is in food and drink and celebration and whatever. To provide an inheritance is another one, or even end-of-life giving. These are purposes of maturity. As God blesses you more and more, you can think more about, okay, how can I bless the next generation? And how could I do that even through end-of-life giving? And then finally, I don't want to skip over this, for investing in business ventures. We talked about calling all week. Some of you may be called to start your own business. There's capital required. Trucks, vehicles, equipment, office space, whatever, computers. Think about, and we'll talk about this later, think about using money to build up and be prepared to capitalize a business venture. Okay, those are some good purposes or uses of our material blessings, which I think are biblical. In light of all this, just some general characteristics of a good steward. Characteristics of a good steward. You won't be surprised. Work hard, work smart. That's one thing. Prioritize your spending. Number 2, prioritize your spending, focusing on the most important. We talked about in work, triaging all the tasks you have to do. Focus on quad 1. Well, you can kind of apply that to your spending as well. Focus on the important things and not the trivial. Control your spending to prevent debt and dependency. This is another characteristic of good stewards. Most people do not have an earning problem. Most people have a spending problem. Right? Okay. You will never make, if you don't control, if you're not good stewards and control your spending, you will never earn enough money. It's always going to be another $50,000 a year or something like that. Practice deferred gratification, your lifestyle. Discern the difference between needs and discretionary things, especially important early in life. And build capital. This is another characteristic of a good steward. This reinforces things I've already talked about. And then finally, we'll have a section on this, Lord willing, care and maintain what God has given you. Don't trash it. Don't trash it and then buy new. Trash it and buy new. That's a bad cycle to get into. All right. So that's all pretty quick. We're going to move on to very nitty-gritty, practical stuff. But before we get into that, I thought I'd bring some math into it. I promised no more math earlier. I lied. High-level financial math. Get ready. This will be on the exam. The sum of all your earnings minus the sum of all your expenses equals surplus, hopefully. If you know your math, right, that answer can come out to be a negative. It can equal a deficit. So there's your high-level math equation. Don't forget it. Most of the problem is with the second part of that subtraction problem. All right. Budgeting. Another AI-generated image before it shut me off. It didn't exactly do what I want to do, but right in the middle of this, about statement number 2 or 3, said, I'm sorry. I'd love to help you. Please go here and pay some money. But so budgeting, let's just talk about budgeting. You can kind of ignore a little bit of this, but some of what's shown here will correspond with the principles I'm about to teach. Okay, I want to introduce to you, maybe the first time, what I call a top-down budgeting process. I did this for most of my life. I was not a detailed budgeter. I made attempts at it throughout. Back in the even early 90s, I was using spreadsheets, and then I tried some software and trying to count for every penny. Back in those days, it took a lot of time, and I just wouldn't keep it up. Now, it may be a little easier these days where you've got electronic payments and you can categorize things electronically pretty quickly. If you want to do it that way, that's great. Here's an alternative. I call it, we'll come back to emergency fund, top-down budgeting. First, budget and set aside and make sure money's flowing to the big-ticket, non-discretionary items. We'll talk about what non-discretionary is in a minute, but let's get the second piece in here so you see the full picture. There's only 2 steps. Then manage your more discretionary spending within what is left. Okay, so what's non-discretionary? We'll build up a budget here in a moment. But, well, you tell me. Audience participation time. What would be the big bucket, non-discretionary, sometimes even fixed costs that you've got to worry about? Mortgage, yes. Insurance, yeah, I would probably put that, yes, that would go in there. Yes, here? Health insurance, yes. Back here in the back. You have a lot of discretion on gas. It depends on your situation. Yeah, but you possibly, depending on your situation, could go in there. Joe? A what? A car, I get that. What was that second term? Loan. Boo, hiss. Boo, hiss. Sorry to put you on the spot. Another one. Food. I wouldn't put it in this big bucket item. You've got a lot of discretion there, and it's one that you can flex pretty easily. Yes, back in the back. Tithe. Thank you. There's a good one. All right, that's enough. Taxes. Yeah, so let me make sure we hit them all. Boo. Tithe. Emergency fund if you don't have one. Boo, hiss if you don't already. Housing, transportation, car, insurances. Okay, so those are it. And they may change depending on your situation. But you direct debit these things. You automatically get them paid as much as you can. They're out of sight, out of mind. You're just taking care of them. Boom, boom, boom. And then what are the discretionary things? Just for the sake of time, let me hit some of these. The obvious ones, there's an obvious discretionary and some that are not so obvious. Eating out is very discretionary. It can be 0. And for some of you, and this includes the Starbucks coffee drink, right? Yeah. It can go anywhere from 0 to, something in moderation and still be good stewards, I think. But a lot of you, early in your life, it's going to be a lot closer to 0, or it should be, than moderation, So that will eat up a budget very quick. And this includes not only the stops at Starbucks or McDonald's in the morning when you've failed to prepare and don't have breakfast, or I don't eat breakfast. I just wait till I get to work at 10 o'clock when I'm starving to death and go down and buy something, right? That's how it eats into it. So it includes those lunch outs, all right? I'm not saying that every once in a while on a Friday lunch or a Thursday lunch, the group's going out, that you can't budget that in. But be very careful. Take your lunch to work. Eat your breakfast before you go to work. Make your coffee before you go to work. These are all just, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I just can't. I got to preach it. All right. Some of the less, eating out, entertainment, obvious. Vacation, I've already spoken about in Q&A. You're not entitled to an airplane vacation every year, especially early. You're not entitled anytime, but you may be able to budget that later. Streaming services, money grabber and a time waster. Electronics, toys, less obvious. Discretionary. Again, this is the stuff that once you've paid the big bills, the things that you know you got to do, those quad one things, these are things that you can have discretion on, but you need to be careful about and manage within what is left. The less obvious things are food and drink, your grocery bill. You have a lot of control over that. Clothing, huge control over that. What's the solution for clothing? Goodwill. And you don't go to Goodwill down at the hood, okay? Down in the bad part of town. Where do you go? You go to Franklin, Tennessee, and you hit all the Goodwills around Franklin, Tennessee. Yeah, there's a secret to low-cost, high-end clothing, right? Just want to get that in. But discretionary, yes. You can get very close to zero on clothing if you're not a slave to fashion. You should not be paying any more than 50% of retail most of the time. That's not always true, but a lot of times it's true. Furnishing, and appliances, use stuff, find it, ask around. These are very discretionary things that you can control and really make low cost in your budget. Okay, so this is my secret, my way of budgeting. It's worked for me. It may not work for you. If you want to do the detailed budget and count for every penny, that's good too. That can be useful, especially if you have trouble managing the discretionary. But for me, both my wife and I, my wife's here, Janice in the back. Hello, Janice. Hey. We were both raised in a frugal family. You could call us very tight with our money. And we didn't have as much trouble as long as we set aside the big chunks first. All right, so that's top-down budgeting. All right, what are we going to do next? We're going to go through a hypothetical budget here. But before I do that, let me just step back one thing, and I'm going to hit this pretty hard. Emergency fund. What's this about? It's saving money and setting aside for emergencies. What can those be? An unexpected repair on your clunker that you bought without a loan. A lot of times that's a transmission. What's a new transmission cost these days? How much? Woo! Maybe you can find something better. I did an AI search. AI search, it tells the truth, right? It went up to $6,500, but it started about $2,500. I'm not sure where you get $2,500 transmission these days, but maybe. So there's a lot of money. So emergency fund for auto repair, medical bills, going to the ER. What can that cost you? $1 million. It could, but let's say you break a finger. Easily 500. You can hit $1,000-$2,000 pretty quickly if there's a few procedures in the ER. That's another reason to have a discretionary fund. Another one is, I'm going to hit it now, hit it later. You should be planning toward high deductible insurance plans. Car, home, very high deductible. Why? Because it makes your premiums low. How can I afford very high deductible insurance? It's on the board. It's emergency fund. You're not dependent on the insurance company handling that, and in the long run, you'll come out much better. So that's another reason you want an emergency fund. And then there can be others. There's other emergencies, certainly. But one of the big ones is loss of job. We talked about being flexible and not worry and taking risk early in the both in your career choices. You might hit dead ends. You may get fired because you won't use pronouns that some employer wants you to use. But job change, job situations, that's another reason to have an emergency fund. So start now, build it now, be laser focused on it now. I'm talking, if you're working, you're 14 years old, you're doing odd jobs, set aside money for an emergency fund. Certainly ramp that up as you go. Start small. Try to think about those emergencies I just talked about. Make sure you're covering those. And then when you get married, hopefully, Lord willing, you can think about those job loss situations where you've got responsibilities to a family, and then you've got to ramp that emergency fund up a little more. In the end, you should be going to about 6 months of expenses. So 6 months of your base expenses should be in your emergency fund. And if you use it, you build it back as quickly as possible. Right? So start small, think in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. Get there, and then build up to 6 months worth of expenses. And you can go a little higher, depending on your situation. But do it. Keep it funded. Start now. Frankly, before you get, I'm not saying this is a hard stop criteria, okay, before you get married, but ideally, before you get married, this should be taken care of. You won't see it in my budget here in a moment, because I'm assuming you're going to have it in the bank, in a safe account already. Emergency fund, you got to do it. All right, we're going to do a hypothetical budget. This is for illustration only. It's based on $50,000 a year. That's $25 an hour with no overtime. And it's roughly based on the cost of East Tennessee, which is right in the middle of God's country, right? It's also based on a couple, and with the $50,000, I'm thinking of a single earner. Now, you got two earners. You may only get to 50 with two earners for a while, right? If you got two earners, it could be significantly more than 50,000, but that's where I put it right now, just for illustration purposes. So if you're thinking, let me just go ahead and say this because it'll become clear as we go. If you're thinking a $20 an hour job, it may be great for you right now. It may work for a two-earner family, just a couple, no children yet. It may even work there. But it's going to be really tight at $20 an hour if you're a single earner family, as we'll see in a moment. So, but I put it at 25. This is about what you could expect after a few years working in an Amazon warehouse or starting position, say in most operations roles in industry without overtime. That's roughly where you're going to start. So this doesn't assume a high level of education, getting you an entry into some higher paying jobs necessarily. All right, we'll start breaking this down. First, big bucket item, tithe. It's $5,000, that's 10%. I'm not going to make the case for the continuing need for tithe and the new covenant, the new today in the church age, but Q&A or ask me at lunch. Tithe. FICA taxes, federal taxes, income taxes, two categories. The FICA taxes is what it is. What is it, 6.2%, something like that. That's your part. If you're an employer, you're paying that again for your employee, right? So keep that in mind. If you're going to hire employees as a business owner, you're paying pretty high employer taxes, employee taxes. That's 10%. I put the federal taxes pretty low because it probably will be pretty low. The effective taxes at the federal level, at this income level. Children will make that even a little smaller. Rent and mortgage, our mortgage, I put it $1,300 a month. Annual $15,600. Utilities, I threw in a number there. That's going to vary a lot depending on your situation. That is sort of discretionary. You can tweak on that, those utilities, especially energy bill, but it's probably one of those things you just want to auto pay and just assume there's, on average through the year, it's kind of a fixed level. Put that in the big bucket item. I've used 37% of my income just on that. Grocery, I put in $800. Now some of you are going to say, how are we going to make it on $800? And some of you are thinking, wow, if I could spend $800, I could live high on the hog. That's good if you're thinking that, but a lot of people don't live that way. So my encouragement to young families and young mothers or young wives in particular, learn how to save on your grocery. I'm going to back up to housing. I'm going a little too fast. I think I can slow down just a little bit because I skipped over some things. So hold your thought on grocery, housing. Start small. Rent until you can pay down 20%. I'm not against home mortgages, but make sure you got them well capitalized so you're not underwater. Be careful, though. If you're not sure of your career, where you're going to be, it's better to rent. Be flexible. One of the things that locks people into something that is really not where God may be calling them is debt, including home mortgage. So be careful of jumping into a home. I know the finances say, oh, I should buy. Well, that depends. There's a lot of things, and one of them is, do I think I'm going to be here a while? Because there's a lot of expense and churn of buying and selling houses, which will eat up quickly any net benefit of buying versus renting. Plan to move 2 or 3 times. That's what we did. Not luxury, but upping up as your space needs. Don't pay for rent. Don't rent or pay mortgage on space that you don't need. Wait till the kids come, and that will pay off in your budget. Homesteading, a lot of you like to do that. That's a good thing to do, small farms. But be careful. There's a lot of expenses, a lot of startup costs with that. You may not be in a position to do it early in your career, other than maybe a few chickens in the backyard. Insurance on housing, shop around. And certainly pick the high deductible plan with your emergency fund. And don't do these stupid maintenance agreements. Sorry if I just offended someone. They're not worth it. Okay, maintain your own stuff. Keep your own, we'll get to this later. Keep your stuff well maintained. Don't pay insurance for house maintenance or breakdown. Just have your normal run-of-the-mill insurance, housing insurance for catastrophes. All right, a few things on housing. Let's go back to grocery. This does not include eating out. Okay, this budget here of $800 a month is not intended to cover eating out. Buy and prepare whole foods, not pre-processed. Plan meals ahead of time. Shop smartly ahead, based on planned meals. Grow vegetables. That can help. It's a low capital way to get into some homesteading. Don't keep junk food in your house. It's expensive and not good for you. That's the best way. That's the best way. I love junk food, and I'm addicted to sweets. Okay? So I just can't have it in the house. Right? Just don't have it in the house. Save it for vacations. That's right. My kids loved it when we go on vacations because they got those sweet teas in a can and potato chips. Yeah. Some of you recognize all that. All right. Watch out for the quiet budget killers like morning cereals, pre-processed foods, and more than anything, learn from others how to shop frugally. Some of that's hard to learn. Talk to others that you know have experience. Look for people in your church that have large families and you kind of suspect the income's not great. Go talk to them. They'll teach you a lot. Groceries. All right. Medical insurance, high deductible. Let's camp out here a little bit. High deductible plans for sure. Your employer may provide something that's best value. If that's good, that's fine. But choose the high deductible plan. Keep your emergency fund funded. And also, before I leave it, we'll touch on it again, invest in health savings accounts. An HSA, this is a tax-efficient way to save because you put money into an HSA before taxes. You don't pay taxes on that money. It's just taken off the top of your income. You don't pay taxes on the principal ever. You don't pay taxes on the growth on those HSAs ever, if you use it correctly. And when you take the money out, again, just like I said, you don't pay taxes anytime, as long as you use it for qualified medical expenses. So this can be a part of your emergency fund, right? HSA, if you're eligible for it, but you have to have a high deductible standard insurance type program. It's not available for Christian sharing programs, unfortunately. Maybe we'll get there. Hope we can. But if you have an opportunity, maximize your HSA. After emergency fund, that's the first thing you probably should put your money into. All right? For savings. I mean, not counting tithe and other things, of course. So HSA is important. What about Christian health care? Christian sharing programs? I certainly support those. They may often be even better than the employer option, so consider them. Samaritans, Christian Healthcare Ministries, there are others. Those are the two of the best in my view. I get no kickback from those organizations. Things like direct primary care, a black bag. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Should I do those? Maybe, but they're probably going to be a little too pricey for you, and you don't need that level of care at your age, most of you. Keep your emergency fund going for those emergency room visits, and wait for black bag care when you're, like me, old and decrepit. All right, let's move to auto. Oh, we used 18% on that, by the way. It's fairly conservative, I think. Auto. Insurance is it should be your biggest expense. I've got $200 per month, $2,400 per annum. This is a young couple, all right? You get older, that insurance takes a dive, which is helpful if you have a good driving record. So drive well, defensive driving. Do not, if you're buying a clunker young in your years, like you should be, don't get comprehensive. It's probably not worth it to you, right? Just buy the liability insurance portion of that. It'll be much lower for you, and that's how you can save money. And it's often, almost always, not always, but often, always cheaper to fix a problem than trash the car and go buy something else. Transmission. Let's say it's $3,500, and you're buying a clunker every 5 years. Okay, young in life, that's what you're doing, buying used. You'll pay off that $3,500 transmission job in about 3 to 4 years, compared to the cash flow analysis of trashing that car and going buying another one. It's almost always better to fix the problem. Now, there are different situations. If you're burning 5 quarts of oil every day, don't go fix a transmission, right? Because you're going to have to do an engine overhaul soon, and then the economics are going to change. But you can do a lot. You can put a lot of money in a used car and get another 3 years out of it. You've come out ahead. Think about surviving with one car. All right, I know it's inconvenient, but it'll save you a lot of money early in your life. Learn how to do auto repair yourself. Learn how to replace brakes, change oil, change inverters. Think of water pumps. There are some simple things. YouTube it and then fake it till you make it. Find an honest mechanic if you don't want to do that. Those can be somewhat hard to find, but ask around in your church. Don't just go to the nearest mechanic. All right, next, what's else? Oh, internet and phone. I put some money in there, and wow, we are out of money. Money, 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 out of money. It's a rich man's world. Whew, $54,000. Where'd that song come from? Abba. Yeah, very good. Very good. $54,000. We started with 50. We're out of money. And we haven't even gotten to some things, right? Now, if you're thinking, I can save there, I hope you are. Look down there. I hope you are thinking, I can save there, I can do better there, and you should be doing better in some of these. But it's easy to run out of money. Money, money, money. It's so funny. All right. What's not included? Emergency fund's not included in this budget because you should already have it. Period. Savings for near-term capital needs. Now, I did put money in there for the car. I jumped over that, sorry. You should be setting aside money for that next car because you're buying clunkers, right? So you know in 5 years or so, maybe by the Lord's providence, you can get 6. But you know you have to buy another car. And you want to upgrade a little bit, right? Step it up. This is Dave Ramsey stuff, right? And so you need to be saving for it. So that money in the budget was not to pay back a loan. It was to pay forward for the next car. All right. Savings for near-term capital. Car is going to be a part of that, but certainly a down payment on a home you should be thinking about early. When you're 16, working, get the emergency fund up to the level. What's the next thing you want to think about? Okay, down payment on a loan. Or maybe it's a car. Who knows? But it's not in the budget, so you've got to squeeze that out somehow or get it built up early. General consumables, clothing, hygiene, cleaning products. I've talked about this already. Shop at Goodwill in Franklin, Tennessee, and that will be helpful. Oh, our church has what's the software, the communication software our church has used for sharing things? No. Okay, so there are a lot of them. Set up some system, outside of your normal church email communication system where mothers and wives and even husbands can make things available for free to share and to give away. That can be very helpful, especially for young families that are just getting started. Furniture, other used appliances, beds, mattresses, whatever. You can build up a lot just by participating in that. Start something like that in your church. Eating out. Have I talked about eating out already? Have I talked about Starbucks yet? Yeah. Vacations, I've mentioned already. That's not in here. You need to be innovative with your vacations early. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to take some time off. Most of you have worked for other companies will have at least 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4. If you have a baby these days, a lot of companies, guys, will give you 5, 6 weeks off. So use it wisely, but I think vacations are good, and Dr. Neuheiser's biblical basis for that, the Old Testament feast days, I think is a good way to think about it. A lot of reasons we should take vacations. But be prudent and innovative in how you do that early. No debt service, including cars, in my mind. Just get in the habit of not using debt to buy cars early. Hair care, massages, cosmetology. No, I'm kidding. There's going to be some expense here, but some of you guys can figure out how to get your hair cut without paying $24 every 6 weeks. Electronic gadgets, toys, some of that stuff you just don't need. It's a distraction. Starbucks coffee drinks. Have I talked about Starbucks? McDonald's is better, but it's still not a perfect thing. All right. One other thing is learn to live simple. Just an illustration of this. We've been overseas a couple times and expatriates in England. And the company would pay for air shipment so we could get that early in about a week. So you move over in your suitcases, in a week, the air shipment comes in these boxes, crates, and it's like Christmas. You've been living out of luggage for a week. So you pull all that out, and it's great. Your hiking boots are there finally. And then the surface shipment comes, and it goes across the ocean in a container. It takes a long time. So you live several weeks off your air shipment. And at the end of those weeks, every time, we're thinking to ourselves, isn't this a great life? Stuff complicates things. Manage your stuff. All right? And learn to be content with simple things, low-cost things. And stuff just causes maintenance costs. It can be a distraction because I think, oh, I've invested in this toy, I've got to use this toy, or I've not made a good investment. How silly that is, right? So I'm not saying don't do any of that thing, but be careful. Keep your life simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. I had a note here on the clothing. I forgot to cover it. My daughter, especially my younger daughter, with regard to clothing. Clothing is not a consumable in my life. I have stuff in my closet that I was wearing in the 90s. I'm serious. In the 90s. Yeah. And my youngest daughter and her friends used to say, you are still so 80s. I think that's the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. So keep life simple and wear clothes forever. For me, it's like living in the wilderness for 40 years. God's protecting my shoes, my clothes. They don't wear out. All right. Give attention to your herds. What does this have to do? Take care of your stuff. All right. Hopefully this is not your garage, 20 years into your marriage. Hopefully this is not your garage. Woo. You see that? Yeah. And certainly, hopefully, that's not your kitchen. Right? Yeah. Another AI-generated image, by the way. Boo, hiss. Okay. Yeah, take care of your stuff. So just a few quick things there. Proverbs 27:23, know well the condition of your flock. Give attention to your herds. And give attention to your herds, it says. I think that reminds us of the general principle. Take care of the things that God has given you. Maintenance, repair, cleaning. This includes automobiles, appliances, your home, proper tools, power equipment. A lot of people trash weed eaters every 3 years. Yeah, change the filter, right? Keep the carburetor in good condition. Yeah, you shouldn't be replacing a weed eater every 3 years, right? It builds a positive cycle. As you do more and more of this, you keep things uncluttered, clean, well-maintained. It just reinforces it. Oh, I want to do more of that. I want to do more than that. If you can get in the death spiral, though, things get dirty, cluttered, and you tell your wife one day, we just need to buy another house because I don't want to clean this up. That's a death spiral of not paying attention to your herds. Everything has its place and everything in its place. That can go a long way to reinforcing this whole mentality of giving attention to your herds. So I would encourage you, don't live in a cluttered house. You don't have to. It will build a mentality that expands into other areas that are even more important. Cluttered houses, that's not the end all of everything, but it's foundational to kind of building this mentality, right? So I would encourage that for you. Maybe that's not your personality, and that's fine. If you can live that way and still maintain your stuff, that's fine too. All right, savings. And we're going to have to move pretty quickly here. We talked about emergency fund already, about 6 months of expenses. Make sure this is in high liquidity accounts. You can use money market accounts. CDs may be useful. You got to watch the penalties if you have to take that money out. HSA, did I mention health savings accounts? That can be a part of your emergency fund. Moving along, capital needs near term, car upgrades, talked about that. Home down payment, talked about that. Capital for a business. These are near-term capital needs. Work on those. If you got a 2 to 3 year time frame, then you can think outside of those very safe investments. Maybe start thinking about some mutual funds, a blend of maybe low-risk blended funds. But typically, this is going to be more safe accounts also. CDs, getting the most interest you can, money markets. I don't have time to explain all this. Go see Dave Ramsey. He can talk more about this with you. Or buy Jim Newhouser's book. He goes into this pretty well. Retirement, kind of the third bucket you can be thinking about. We've talked about retirement a little bit, but this is not just entire retirement, this is inheritance, end of life. Why do you need to be worried about this early? Because there's some low hanging fruit that you don't need to let go early in your career. If your company has a matching 401k, you should be working toward saving at least that match, so money's not just getting thrown away. Same thing with your HSA. As soon as HSA is available to you, start making that a priority. And then over time, as the budget allows, you can start maxing out the 401k if you need to. But if you're putting 4 to 5% per year from the start, you're probably going to be okay. And if you don't believe you'll ever need it in retirement because you're going to work till you drop dead, that's fine. Think of it as an inheritance, investing in the next generation, or end-of-year gift. But I think it's still a good priority for you. Here, you're going to choose low liquidity accounts, higher risk accounts, bond stock funds, things like that. I'm not an investment advisor, so we'll just leave it there. Glad to talk about them, though. I spent a lot of time thinking about those. Increased giving above your tithe. I think this should be a priority. But if you're doing the 10%, watch yourself. Don't be at risk of putting yourself in need and becoming the needy one because you are not being prudent with your giving. Focus on that 10%, set it aside, and as the Lord blesses, it should be something you be thinking about as you hit some of these other priorities and get them in order. Use donor advice funds for that. If you don't know what that is, talk to me. You can bunch up your charitable giving and save on taxes. Education, you may say? No, I would say probably not. If so, very little. Make your kids pay for their own education. I didn't do that. If the Lord blesses you well, you can set aside some money for this. By that time, I was just using normal earnings to pay for most education. You shouldn't make that a high priority in your savings. Don't think about 529s right now. So that's my advice on education. Okay, we don't have time to get in the rest of this. If you want to talk about crypto and metals, I know nothing about crypto, and metals I know a little bit more about, but Q&A, lunch. And speaking of that, we will stop there. So let me just close with this. How then shall we live? We should live coram Deo, before the face of God. We acknowledge that all is His. We are good stewards. We work hard. We spend slowly. We get rich slowly if God blesses. And we prioritize the tithe, but then take care of our basic needs as good stewards. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. And as 1 Timothy says, if God does bless you, be rich in good works. Thank you.